We've had climate change protests from children. We've got 2 local authorities now expressing support for climate change policies and better implementation by the government. The DEFRA has gone out to consultation. Meanwhile, the subject of public transport is always an important one, and I think government should be leading where they want other people to follow. They've got targets for the number of people they want to have electric cars over the next 5-10 years. I think the Department of Infrastructure could take the lead and start perhaps having a policy of purchasing electric buses instead of dirty diesels.
Do you think, given that we have a lot of short routes on the island, that it would be quite a successful thing, the electric buses?
Well, I know there are places where they have been implemented, they are in use. So I would be very interested to hear from the Infrastructure Minister whether this has been considered, whether it is feasible for the Isle of Man, and also what the costings are in terms of charging electric buses compared with the fuel costs of the current diesels. And I know that they're getting ever more efficient. They are sort of less polluting, and they are very high standard of bus that we have on the Isle of Man and a good level of comfort. But I do think that if we have got a policy of looking ahead for 5 or 10 years, when I don't know what the average life of a bus is, maybe that will be also revealed next week. But if we're saying that over the next 5, 10, 15 years, shouldn't we be looking now to start purchasing electric buses to replace the diesels so that over time we can be truly benefiting the Isle of Man with cleaner public transport?
Public transport have had some buses over in the last few months, I think it is, that have been on test routes to see how they work on the island's roads. How important is it that we do trial an electric bus before just signing up?
Well, they've trialled many buses, and that has always been the way before purchasing. Even the bendy buses, I think, were trialled here at one point. Yes, they have to be suitable for the island, but when you're talking 33 miles long in total, it should be possible to be able to have rechargeable electric buses on our routes, you would think. But again, I look forward to the Minister's response next week.
It is still a relatively new technology. Do we need to be careful about rushing into this?
I don't think we're rushing into it. I think we're behind the crowd, actually. No, not at all. I think if it's got to be planned over several years, buses last for several years and notch up hundreds of thousands of miles on the roads over that time. I think that the Isle of Man needs to find the best solutions for our public transport now and looking to the future, so that we can be clear that if the government is keen to see more and more people change over to electric vehicles, that they are seen to lead the way.
You do also want to see the figures, the annual fuel costs, the annual mileage, and the comparative data. How important is that when considering decisions like taking on electric buses?
Well, I think it would be helpful to have the facts in terms of whether the department's done their research to know exactly how cost efficient it would be to change over into electric vehicles compared with diesels. And I suppose I'm imagining that the initial purchase cost of an electric bus is higher than a standard diesel bus, but perhaps the lifetime costs of operating an electric bus would be more comparative with the lifetime costs of a diesel bus.